Hello, everyone. It is Anthony Bandiero, attorney for Blue to Gold Law Enforcement Training, bringing you another Roadside Chat. We got a good one today. This is an officer in Mississippi. He's talking about, do we have the authority to remove a firearm, secure it in the trunk if we're going to let a passenger take a vehicle from the scene? Okay, so the officer says we stopped the vehicle for a traffic violation. There is a front seat passenger. The driver is ultimately arrested for a warrant. Now, the driver says there's also a gun in the car. Okay, that's not unheard of, right, in a lot of states, including Mississippi. The passenger is in the vehicle, has a valid license, he's being cooperative and so forth. Now, the driver is saying, hey, please let my passenger take the vehicle. The passenger is willing and able to take the vehicle. The question is, can the officer enter that vehicle, retrieve the firearm, secure it in the trunk, and so forth? Okay. Now, the first question we have to answer is, would that entry into the vehicle implicate the Fourth Amendment? Because if it doesn't implicate the Fourth Amendment, we don't have to justify it under the Constitution, right? Well, certainly it would. It would definitely implicate a reasonable expectation of privacy of the driver. And because the passenger is going to take possession of the vehicle and he's going to have care, custody, control, it is also going to implicate his expectation of privacy, right? Because he's actually possessing the vehicle. So if we go into the vehicle and we find something in plain view, drugs and so forth, then we are going to be asked in court, what gave us that authority? Well, anytime you have a search or seizure, you have to think about the acronym CREW. CREW stands for consent, or a recognized exception, or a warrant. Those are the three ways that you search or seize under the Fourth Amendment. Well, let's look at consent. Can we argue that the driver gave express or implied consent to enter that vehicle and retrieve the firearm, and especially to put it into the trunk? And the answer is no. You're going to have to, in order to win the consent argument, you would actually have to have some words, gestures, conduct, and so forth to argue that, or to basically convince a court that the driver would have contemplated that you were going to do what you did. Now, maybe by telling you the gun is in the car, they would have contemplated and implicitly consented to you retrieving the firearm. But I don't think regardless, I mean, if it was that one, maybe, but I don't see any implied consent to open up that trunk, right? There was no talk about the trunk. There was nothing talked about, hey, yeah, man, you can make that weapon safe. I don't want, anything bad, something to happen to it. Nothing like that to indicate that the officer had the permission to open up that guy's trunk. So I think we have a problem on both, to get the firearm and so forth. I don't see consent. Let's move on to a recognized exception. There are a couple of recognized exceptions that may be at play here. The first one is community caretaking. We know from a Supreme Court case called Cady versus Dombrowski, a case from 1970 that, actually 1973, that we are allowed to enter a vehicle to secure a firearm if we have objective reasons to believe it could fall into the wrong hands. That's kind of like your classic, somebody leaves their gun in plain view in a parking lot and the cops are getting called and they want to secure it, so that nobody smashes and grabs the car or the gun, right? Okay. Well, here, I don't think we really have that, right? At the end of the day, the driver has consented, here probably expressly, for the passenger to take the car and everything in it, right? I mean, he's not saying, oh, can you please empty the car out and grab this and grab. I mean, he also told the officer the gun was in there. So is he consenting for that gun to also be leaving the scene with the passenger? Well, some states would not allow this, right? Some states are pretty strict, like your Illinois and your Californias and your New Yorks. They're not going to let the passenger take the gun anyway, because it's probably not legal for him to even have it without some kind of identification, registration card and so forth, right? Besides the fact that those are likely unconstitutional, that's not the crux of the question. Here, we're talking about Mississippi, right? A state where presumptively it's not going to be unlawful for this passenger who has no warrants himself. I'm sure the cops ran him or her to possess this firearm. Mississippi is a constitutional carry state. The passenger is allowed to do it, and so forth. So we don't have really community caretaking. In fact, if you asked the driver, hey, do you want this gun to be booked into, safekeeping? I'm sure they would not want the gun to be booked into safekeeping. I'm sure they'd be like, no, my passenger can have that too. So I don't see community caretaking. The next thing is, let's look at the protective sweep doctrine. That comes from a case called Michgian versus Long, another, 1980s case, early 80s, about officers have the authority to enter and sweep a vehicle in the passenger compartment if they have reason to believe that an occupant is armed and dangerous and may access that weapon. Well, the driver definitely could have been considered dangerous if he was a fugitive and we knew there's a firearm in there. But however, he's already been taken in custody. He's cuffed and stuffed in the back of the black and white. So he's not going to be an issue here. So Michgian versus Long no longer applies to him. Let's move on to the passenger. Well, certainly if you have objective reasons to believe that the passenger could be a danger with that weapon, then do what you got to do, right? And I would also include unsafe handling. They, you talk to them about this firearm and like, oh my God, I'm so scared of firearms. I wouldn't know what to do with it. Maybe that is, maybe not armed and dangerous, but that actually would fall under community caretaking. But things like that, right? But if you have a reason to believe that the person's a danger, then certainly you can, hold on to this firearm during your stop. Now, the one question has come up several times, and I made a video on this, is about opening trunks to return a firearm. I don't believe you have the authority to do that. I mean, whatever protective sweep you're going to do, there is no case out there that I'm aware of that says that you can, as a matter of routine, open a person's trunk just to return, to secure a firearm. I mean, can you open up their backpack and put it into the backpack? In other words, the backpack is a container and so is the trunk. Pretty much my final answer on here. I believe that the best thing to do in this situation, if you really have no reason to believe you're in danger, if there's no reason to believe that the person cannot, safely possess this firearm legally, safely, and so forth, then I think you should just ask for consent, right? Ask the driver, hey, we got this gun in there, can we secure it, and so forth. It seems to, look, the driver is you're allowing his passenger to take his car from the scene. He's probably gonna be pretty thankful and appreciative of your gesture, right? And it seems to me that he would likely consent to making things safe for everybody. But that's what I would do. But I would go from there, right? Those are the things I would consider. I would consider protective sweep, I would consider community caretaking, and I would consider consent. I don't have enough facts here to give you an answer on which one I would do. Okay, you would need a little bit more, but that's what I would consider. Hope you like what we're talking about here at Blue to Gold. If you like what we're doing, please attend a class. Look at our schedule at bluetogold.com. Sign up for one of our webinars. We do weekly webinars. They're a lot of fun and so forth. Okay, like, subscribe, share with your friends. That helps us too. But until next time, my friends, stay safe and make good case law.